yo 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 yo
Hello once again, Theor. 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 Purists, welcome to MatPat. Purists, welcome to MatPat. Purists, welcome to MatPat. Purists, welcome to Mat. Probably never heard of it. It's called Five Nights at Freddy's. It's called Five Nights at Freddy's. It's called Five Nights at Freddy's. 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 Five Nights. Oh my gosh, I am so scared right now. Oh God. It was only the fan, huh? It's only the fan, huh? Only a fan. It's only the fan, huh? Only a fan. It's only the fan. I've never played a game this intense. It's only the fan, huh? Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the door! Oh God! Shut the door! Shut the door! Shut the Oh! Oh! Just the fan. Just the fan. Just the fan. Just the fan. I don't know about you, but every time the camera makes the sound. I don't know about you, but every time the camera makes the sound. I don't know about you, but every time the camera makes the sound. I don't know about you, but every time the camera makes the sound. What? That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. Man, this is truly compelling gameplay. This is truly compelling gameplay. This is truly compelling. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm almost out of power. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm almost out of power. It's 5 a.m. I don't know if I'm gonna make it. 5 a.m. Please don't get me Freddy. Please don't get me Freddy. Get me Freddy. Please don't get me Freddy. Get me Freddy. Please don't. This is what it takes to get you, son. 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 What it takes.
Experimented with simultaneous streaming since I haven't really created an Instagram account for our stream. 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 Instagram account for our stream.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where fear is our middle name. Matthew Fear Patrick. It's a very strange name. Okay, I'll admit it, I didn't give Five Nights at Freddy's enough credit when it first came out. A few jump scares from creatures that, aren't that scary. People overreacting to it on YouTube. Meh, pass. But then when I asked you about it, you showed overwhelming support for an episode on the game on Twitter, so I began to dig a little deeper. Deeper, and what I found was some of the most interesting storytelling, most intriguing mysteries, and most disturbing events I'd read about in a long time. Now, if you were just to play the game straight through 5 days, the story would actually come across as pretty superficial. You're the new night guard watching the security cameras at a Chuck E. Cheese-style restaurant called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. 4 animatronics roam the halls at night because the owners don't want their servos to lock up. Bad news is, you can't let them near you, or else they'll kill you on the spot because you look like a naked endoskeleton. Ow, ow! Show them those circuits! Apparently, one of them bit someone back in 87, presumably 1987. And the past guard leaves you recorded phone messages to act as your tutorial, that is, as much as he could record before he got himself killed. And that's it! Stay 5 nights, collect your paycheck, done, game over, play something new. But playing it that way is doing the game a huge disservice, because that's not even scratching the surface. If you're really observant, you start to unravel the layers of unsolved mysteries around this place. You find that there's a fifth animatronic, that posters on the wall will change randomly, that news clippings appear and disappear, telling the dark secrets of this twisted place. Putting it all together, here's the rest of the story. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, once a popular restaurant, fell into hard times when 5 children went missing there after being lured to a back room by a man dressed in a character costume. Though a suspect was caught and convicted, the bodies of the children were never recovered. The pizzeria was also threatened with shutdown due to sanitation complaints, as foul odors started to come from the animatronics, blood and mucus oozing from their eyes and mouths. The last article, written years after the incident, states that the pizzeria would finally be closed by year end. In addition to the core 4 robots, Chica, Bonnie, Freddy, and Foxy, there's also a fifth, unofficially referred to as Golden Freddy. Ignoring the rules of physics, Golden Freddy appears and disappears at will, can inexplicably travel through doors, wherever, causing strange hallucinations. And when he attacks you, you're not taken to the typical game over screen, your game crashes. So that's unsettling. And there's also strange messages appearing on the walls, repeating the words, "It's me." According to the game's creator, the place is indeed haunted by what we can only assume to be the spirits of the 5 lost children. So that's the gist of it. Murder, missing children, foul odors, killer robots, and pizza. But that story leaves a lot of lingering questions. Who is your character? How's he fit in? Why does he stay for 5 nights when he's very clearly confronting the possibility of death? What more can we know about this terrifying Golden Freddy? And most importantly, what is the complete story behind Five Nights at Freddy's? They're all good questions about a delightfully incomplete and mysterious story with just enough threads to keep you theorizing. So now, if you'll indulge me, let me reciprocate that story with one of my own. I think you'll find it interesting. December 1993, Aurora, Colorado. 10 p.m. Tuesday night at a local Chuck E. Cheese. After a family birthday party runs long, manager Margaret Kohlberg and teenage employees Sylvia Crowell, Ben Grant, Colleen O'Connor, and Bobby Stevens are forced to stay late to close up shop. But as Margaret tallies receipts in the back, Bobby scrubs down the kitchen, and the other 3 work outside in the main arcade. Unknown to any of the 5, there's actually a 6th person locked in the building with them, waiting silently in the darkened restrooms. A 19-year-old named Nathan Dunlap. Earlier that year, Nathan had begun working there as a cook, dough master, before getting fired in July after a disagreement over his hours. Now, 5 months later, he was back. At 10:05, he left the bathroom, pulled out a small caliber handgun, and proceeded to execute everyone in the building. First Sylvia, then Ben, then Colleen. Dunlap then moved to the kitchen, where he surprised Bobby Stevens. The bullet entered Bobby's jaw, sending him sprawling onto the ground. Then finally, Nathan moved to the back, the office, where Margaret opened the safe before Nathan shot her twice, proceeded to grab her bag, filling it with $1,600 in cash, arcade tokens, and keychains. Spurred on by the building security footage, police were at his home a few hours later, where he was promptly arrested. Eventually, he was tried and sentenced to death, but his story re-entered the news just recently as his punishment has been postponed, leading people to debate whether he's able to sleep soundly, knowing that his execution has been delayed. This is a tragic story, a disgusting waste of human life, and one that I won't joke about or make fun of in any way, but I want to address it because I have a strong suspicion that this story is the one that inspired Five Nights at Freddy's. Let's look at the facts. First, I don't think that there's any doubt that Freddy's is a parody of Chuck E. Cheese. From the singing animatronics to the alliterative naming of the characters, the parallels are just obvious, so the setting is certainly the same. Next, what year does Five Nights take place? The time is certainly kept vague, but there are clues that we can put together. For one, the Chuck E. Cheese franchise had a tremendous period of growth and success in the late 80s and early 90s, but started to decline along the same time as arcades, with at-home video game consoles taking center stage. So that's one clue, but we can get even more detailed, specifically with your character's paycheck. Each night you're working a 6-hour shift, and you're spending 5 nights there. So that's 30 hours of total work time for $120. In total, $4 an hour. How can they do that? That's below minimum wage for 2014. But in 1990, minimum wage was $3.80. In 1991, it was raised to $4.25. And by 1996, you were looking at about $5 an hour. So the game seems to take place between 1991 and 1996. The Nathan Dunlap story took place in 1993. But let's move on to the most important comparison, the victims. In the game, there were 5 child victims. In the real-life story, there were also 5 victims. But we can get even more specific. Online theories about the game always tend to draw a parallel between the number of kids missing to the number of animatronics, saying that the children's bodies were stuffed in the various suits. And this appears to be true. Bonnie and Chica both have moans and raspy breath sound effects, as though someone's trying to cling to the last threads of their lives stuffed inside the costumes. And other sounds made by the animatronics are just slowed down versions of children's laughs and screams. Additionally, as the news clipping mentions, the suits ooze blood and mucus and begin to stink, like decaying bodies or reanimated corpses. So 5 victims, 5 suits, seems like a slam dunk, but nowhere does it say that all 5 were murdered, only that they went missing and couldn't be found. Also, the trouble a lot of people have with this theory is Golden Freddy. Why is that guy so limp and lifeless? So unlike the others. It's weird, until you go back to the real life story. Yes, there were 5 people shot that night in Chuck E. Cheese, which matches the 5 victims in Freddy's story, but of those, 1 survived. Bobby, the one from the kitchen, miraculously survived the shot to his jaw. After he was knocked to the floor by the bullet, he went limp, played dead, to avoid the killer coming back to finish the job. And that relates exactly to the advice you're given on night 3 by the phone guy.
Try playing dead. You know, go limp.
Again, let me reiterate that I'm not trying to make light of the real-life events by comparing them to bear costumes and animatronics, but I do want to point out that these similarities do exist. And what else is limp and appears to be a lifeless, empty suit in the game? Golden Freddy. Surviving the attack, Bobby was able to go to trial and be a damning piece of evidence in the case against Nathan Dunlap, ultimately leading to his death sentence. Which animatronic surprises you by appearing randomly? The one you don't expect and has no clear pattern? Golden Freddy. It's also worth mentioning that of all the cameras in the restaurant, one is always black, preventing you from seeing what's going on. That camera is located in the kitchen, leading many to assume it's where Golden Freddy hides, which just so happens to be the place Bobby was able to survive the attack. So I ask, odd coincidence or source of inspiration? In fact, if you think about it, the behavior of the animatronics really corresponds with key features of each of the real-life story's victims. We just covered Golden Freddy and Bobby, but the rest have strange parallels too. Bonnie goes into the utility closet filled with floor cleaning supplies, the most prominent ones being a mop and a broom. It's probably one of the most random rooms in the game, until you consider that Ben, the second victim, was vacuuming at the time of the attack. Foxy is kept sequestered in the back of the building, behind a curtain, more aggressive than all the rest, similar to the way Margaret, the manager, was in the back office counting receipts at the time of the murder, and her role as manager would inherently make her more aggressive or assertive. Sylvia was closest to the bathroom and was cleaning up the salad bar at the time of the attack. Chica walks past the bathroom and is associated with food. And Freddy, well, he doesn't have that strong of a parallel with Colleen, but he does appear in the girls' restroom. Odd for what we would assume to be a male animatronic. Maybe it's a reference to Colleen being a girl, or a nod to Nathan's plan of hiding in the bathroom until he was ready to attack. Alright, after doing all the research, reading every fan theory in existence, and putting all the clues together, what can this mean for the story of the game? I think the game is an allegory for that night back in 1993. Here's my final interpretation. You, Mike Schmidt, are the murderer, former employee of Freddy's Pizzeria. Like Nathan in the real story, you were fired for the reasons stated in the Day 7 pink slip, tampering with the animatronics, being unprofessional, odor. Maybe it was your tampering with the robots that caused the infamous bite of 87. Regardless, like Nathan, you were mad and wanted to get even. So you lured children to the back using a costume, killed them, stuffed their bodies into the animatronic suits, hoping to get the place shut down, then left. Notice that the news newspaper clippings never say it's an employee of the company luring the children away, but we know it must have been someone with access and knowledge of the employees-only section of the building. And as the newspaper clippings clearly show, just like Nathan, you were caught almost immediately, captured on the security footage. You were arrested, tried, and convicted, forced now to live on death row. The Freddy's Pizzeria you work in now are just the nightmares that haunt you, taunting you every night with the phrase, "It's me, it's me." It is you. You are the killer. The nightmare is also why everything is so surreal. Posters switching at random, heads on the animatronics glitching, Golden Freddy appearing and disappearing at will, taunting you as the one that got away. It's also why you're only at the pizzeria from midnight to 6 a.m. every night. It's a nightmare. It's in your sleep. It's a place you created, a restaurant long closed as evidenced by the spider webs, and overrun with angry spirits out for revenge on you and you alone as the one who took their lives, as evidenced by them completely ignoring the naked endoskeleton elsewhere in the building. It's also a place you can't escape from, why you find yourself back there night after night, even after you complete your 5 nights. See you back next week, the ending text goes. You're unable to leave this terror, the threat of death, the guilt, because it never ends. And in a delightfully ironic twist, your personal hell forces you to supervise the exact same security footage that led to your capture in the first place. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Sweet dreams. You know what October reminds me of? Traveling from door to door in order to get free snacks on Halloween. But get this, with Nature Box, every month is like your own personal reverse Halloween, where you don't have to do anything and the snacks come to you at your door. Huh. Pretty awesome. No costumes required. The only thing that is required is that you scroll your mouse on down the screen and click the link in the description or type in naturebox.com/MattPat. Choose your 5 favorite snacks and bada bing bada boom, free trial box arriving straight to your door. No tricks, all treats, just for you. The only thing scarier this Halloween would be no more Nature Box! That was super cheesy, I know. But seriously, their stuff is really good. So you should click the link in the description and check it out. And as always, thank you for supporting the sponsors who support us. It really does make a big difference on this channel for all us theorists. And now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go hide under the covers and rock myself to sleep because this episode was kind of creepy. And it's really dark in here, and never been good with the dark, so yeah, I'm gonna go now.
Hello? Hello? Oh, hello, and welcome to the new and improved Five Nights at Freddy's 2 video. I'm here to answer any questions the game may have left unanswered. The game's developer, he's a pretty tricky guy. Don't worry, though. We'll get everything cleared up. Oh, and, watch out for the puppet.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, the show that promises not to include any more gratuitous jump scares, unless that's just what I want you to think, so I can lull you into a false sense of security and scare you again. But I wouldn't do that. I'll just let the uncertainty of whether a jump scare is going to happen or not drive you insane for the rest of this episode. Man, I love reverse psychology. You know what else I love? These games! Not because I'm freaked out by the rosy-cheeked, tingle-looking, emotionally dead animatronics. Okay, well, Balloon Kid is pretty messed up, but whatever. No, what I appreciate about these games is the level of thought that went into every element of the story. When you create a game that has people rage debating about whether it's a sequel or a prequel, you've definitely done something right. Unless that was never your intent, in which case you've done something horribly, horribly wrong. Anyway, the point is, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 looks to be everything you'd want in a sequel. More cameras, more danger, and more fan. Oh, the fan. But that also comes with more questions. Questions about the game's lore. And while others will provide you with the jump scares, I provide you with what everyone really wants, answers. Well, maybe not everyone. What an elite, educated subset of you really want, answers. So grab yourselves a slice of Freddy Fazbear's signature pizza, cause we're about to dig in. Ugh, tastes like cardboard. Let's get the big one out of the way first. Is the game a sequel or a prequel sequel? And what I mean by that is, contrary to popular belief, just because it has a big 2 slapped next to the name doesn't automatically mean the game comes after the first one in a timeline sense. It's a sequel, yes, but it tells a prequel story. Take for instance these all-time classics: Psycho 4: The Beginning, Lion King 1.5, and the actual all-time classic Godfather Part 2. All of them sequels that just so happen to also be prequels. It's not mutually exclusive. So where's Five Nights at Freddy's 2 fit in? Knowing its place in the timeline is crucial for understanding its story. Well, to figure that out, let's focus on the paycheck you receive at the end of your 5th night. The date places the events of the game in 1987, a whole 6 years ahead of when we determined the first game took place in our first video. Sounds like a prequel, but we found that date in the first game by calculating Mike Schmidt's hourly pay and comparing that to the minimum wage of the 90s. If Scott Coffin, the game's developer, is just picking random numbers for the payments, this bit of evidence would be meaningless. Except that he's not. At the end of Five Nights 2, you get paid $100.50. Divide that by the 30 hours worked and you get $3.35 an hour, the exact minimum wage for 1987. Which means that us using minimum wage calculations to identify the year of Five Nights 1 is a perfectly valid way to prove it, and shows that it takes place after the events of Five Nights 2. Still don't believe me? Players brave enough to survive the extra night 6 are rewarded with a bonus check and a newspaper clipping that says the toy robots are getting scrapped, and that the old ones are going into storage for a new, smaller scale version of the restaurant. That would explain why the old models reappear in Five Nights 1 and the toy models don't. And notice how it mentions a smaller version of the restaurant. The building in Five Nights 1 is significantly smaller than the setting of Five Nights 2. Need more evidence? What about the fact that on the first night in the office, the phone guy explains that the robots used to walk around during the day just like they do in Five Nights 2, but not anymore. Or the fact that phone guy dies in the first game, making it hard for him to also be the phone guy in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 if it takes place after. Call me the Phantom Menace, cause every way to Sunday, this game is a prequel. So with that revelation out of the way, we're able to piece together the rest of the timeline and dig a little bit deeper. Posters everywhere in Five Nights 2 welcome you to this new location, implying that there was another Freddy Fazbear's Pizza somewhere before this one. Additionally, the phone guy makes reference to it on night 1, mentioning the old location and how it was left to rot. So we know that there was one Freddy Fazbear's Pizza for the first game, one for the second game, and one that came before both of them that we've never seen. But even before that, the phone guy also mentions an even older restaurant called Fredbear's Family Diner, which, aside from its confusingly different name, also had different owners. So let me recap. There's the restaurant from the first game, which is the last in the timeline. The one that you're currently working at in 1987 in Five Nights 2, an older location of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria left to rot, and the original Fredbear's Diner. Jeez, I hope you're still with me, because this is more complicated than the Zelda timeline. Anyway, it's at this first location, the diner, where the whole story begins. Submitted for the approval of the Game Theorists Society, this is the true tale of Five Nights at Freddy's. When you die in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, before you've even gotten over the jump scare, you sometimes get a screen like this. Oh, turn it off, it's too horrifying. That, youngsters, was E.T. for the Atari, a console that came out before the NES. Yes, around the same time as the dinosaurs. It's widely considered to be the worst game of all time, hence me reacting in a horrified manner. See? Humor, folks. But seriously, you get these disturbing death minigames which, true to the 1987 setting, use Atari-esque graphics to depict various horrific events. All the while, a creepy robotic voice spells out letter by letter things like help them, save them, or save him. These death minigames are the most important piece in figuring out the true story behind these games. Let's start with this one. This death minigame has you playing as Freddy, taking cake to screaming children at a birthday party. As Freddy rushes around trying to keep the whole party happy, a single sad child looks on from outside, when suddenly you're powerless to do anything but look on in abject horror as a purple man pulls up in a car, murders the child, and drives off. It's my belief, loyal theorists, that this game takes place at Fredbear's Diner, and is chronologically the first event that we see in this timeline. How do I know? Well, it's a small establishment, and there's only one animatronic, Freddy, as opposed to all the other games which show other robots. But more importantly, this murdered child is the one that sets everything into motion. One of the new tasks added to Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is winding a mysterious music box that we're told placates one of the animatronics. If you fail to wind the music box, what you're introduced to is this terrifying thing, the puppet. It looks like No-Face from Spirited Away. You know what else he looks like? Take a look at that murdered child again. See how his tear tracks remain visible on his face, even after he's dead? If we assume that they'll continue to stay with him into the afterlife, we can make a pretty good case that this kid's murdered spirit eventually found its way into the puppet animatronic. But that's not all. What jump scare happens after this Save Him minigame? After seeing this tear-stained child's murder reenacted in 8-bit, the puppet jumps out of the screen and attacks you. Coincidence? I don't think so. That incident marks the first time the chain is ever associated with a violent act carried out against a child, and we can infer that it was this incident that caused the original owners of Fredbear's Diner to sell off to the company now known as Fazbear Entertainment. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was senselessly murdered and left to haunt a crappy pizza place for the rest of my life in the body of an awful-looking clown doll, I'd want to get my revenge as soon as possible. Unfortunately for our vengeful puppet, though, it doesn't quite turn out that way. Fast forward a few years to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the first location, the one that has yet to appear in a game. This new restaurant is the one we learned about in my earlier episode and throughout the first game, where our pal the murderer uses a golden Freddy suit to lure away and kill 5 children in the back room. As we read through the various articles on the wall, he gets caught the next day, but the bodies are never found, presumably because they've been stuffed into the animatronic suits. The restaurant stays open for a few months until the dead body stink starts to waft off the robots and causes the place to get shut down for health reasons. But how do we know this happened in the first pizzeria's location? Again, we turn to what the phone guy says. On night 2 of Five Nights 2, he mentions the smell coming from the old animatronics, the smell that got the original restaurant shut down. We also know that after the Golden Freddy incident, it took multiple months for the restaurant to get shut down. That couldn't have happened in the restaurant of Five Nights at Freddy's 2, which is shut down on night 6 and into the foreseeable future. But outside of these lore clues, it also makes logical sense. Before the Golden Freddy murders, there was one dead child whose tear-stained soul existed in the form of the puppet. But now there are 5 more dead children, and thanks to another of the death minigames, we find out exactly what happened to them. In the Help Them minigame, the puppet stuffs the dead children into the robotic suits, giving their souls new life, and preps them for their eternal mission of vengeance. But MatPat, you say through your chattering teeth, there are only 4 dead children in that game. To which I tell you, look closer if you dare. For the frame right before Golden Freddy's head jumps out and attacks features the lost 5th dead child, and what started as a haunted puppet has suddenly become an army of possessed animatronics out for revenge. But wait, that's not all we know. We also know the murder was committed by the same guy who killed the first child. How? Look at the Foxy death minigame. Twice, Foxy runs out to meet the kids, but the 3rd time we see the tall purple man again, smiling. Foxy goes into the other room to find 5 dead children. The man in purple strikes again. Skip ahead to 1987, finally bringing us to the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. The old animatronics have been retired, and the cute new versions of all our favorite friends come equipped with facial recognition software that just so happens to be connected to a sex offender database. Seems like an oddly specific detail, right? Until you consider that the last restaurant was closed for having children get kidnapped and killed killed by an employee. It's a safety measure. You see how it all ties together? So you have some animatronics possessed by vengeful spirits and another batch on the prowl for predators. But that doesn't stop our friend the Purple Man from continuing his life's work of murdering children at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. As we learn from the phone guy on nights 4 through 6, the new restaurant is once again under investigation as, well, I'll let him explain.
Hello. What on earth are you doing there? Didn't you get the memo? The place is closed down, at least for a while. Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right.
The Golden Freddy Killer struck again. The final death minigame also supports this. You, as Freddy, must walk through an exact replica of the building, animatronics all in their proper places, seeing the 5 dead children spread out through the various rooms. And based on what Phone Guy says, it seems like the guilty party was the former night guard, the one who moved to day shift and the one your character replaced. I mean, Phone Guy makes plenty of uncomfortable references to suddenly having an available position during the day.
When we get it all sorted out, we may move you to the day shift. A position just became available. We don't have a replacement for your shift yet, but we're working on it.
But is the Purple Man really someone we've never met, and who's only worked there a week? Or is it someone we trust? Someone with a long history with these characters? Someone no one would suspect? The head guard. The one forced to fill empty positions and teach new recruits by leaving them instructions over the phone. Is the Purple Man the phone guy? Ask yourself this. What do we really know about Phone Guy? Let's look at what he says. First, he always speaks like an outsider looking in. He refers to the management of the company as they. So he's not a higher up like the CEO or even a manager. But he's also not a typical day worker, as he says things like the employees and the staff. So he works there, but isn't generally considered a regular member of the company. We also know that he's qualified to take the role of a night guard. As we learn, he plans to take over the position sometime after night 6, and is on his way out of the position by the time the first game starts.
For now, just make it through the night. When the place eventually opens again, I'll probably take a night shift myself. I actually worked in that office before you. I'm finishing up my last week now, as a matter of fact.
What else do we know? Well, we know that the Phone Guy has a long history with the company, being with it at least since the first pizzeria that we haven't played in. He also openly admits that Foxy the Pirate was always his favorite, and that he has never liked the puppet because, as he says, it was always thinking.
See, I told you wouldn't have any problems. Did Foxy ever appear in the hallway? Probably not. I was just curious. Like I said, he was always my favorite. I'll be honest, I never liked that puppet thing. It's always thinking, and it can go anywhere.
Okay, but what do we know about the Purple Guy, the Golden Freddy Killer? Well, let's look at the minigames again. He has a long history with the franchise, killing since it was Fredbear Diner. We see him smiling as he watches Foxy perform, Phone Guy's favorite, right before Foxy sees the room of dead children. We know that the puppet and the killer wouldn't get along, which would explain Phone Guy's discomfort around a creature that he describes as always thinking. And here's the bombshell. We know the killer is a security guard. How? On very rare occasions during the Save Them minigame, while Freddy chases the puppet, the Purple Man appears and chases you. Look on his chest. It's an orange badge, the kind that would be given to a security guard. Now look at his eyes. Notice the white spots? An odd, seemingly innocuous detail. But now look at Golden Freddy. Look deep into his dead, vacant eyes. What do you see? 2 white spots. Pinpricks, really. Barely visible. They're there. And now finally, what do we see in Purple Guy's hand? Well, the Atari graphics make it tough to discern. It's not like any gun or knife I've seen. No, that to me is very clearly a phone. The robotic voice is spelling out for you, save them, save them. But when Purple Guy, Phone Guy, catches you, the screen crashes and all you're left with is, you can't. But that's not where it ends, Internet. As you and I both know, there's still Five Nights at Freddy's 1. If this game is last in line and the puppet is truly pulling the strings behind all of this, you might be asking yourself where he is in Five Nights 1. We know the other animatronics got scrapped, but this ghostly guy should still be around if this timeline I proposed is correct. And get this, the puppet is in the first game. Take a look at the east hallway. It seems pretty normal, right? But every so often, the posters on the walls change to this: a crying child with 2 streaming lines down his face. Look familiar? It should. The Five Nights at Freddy's series is about vengeance. 1 child, 6 children, more, looking for revenge against a sick child killer. The purple guy, the guy who just so happens to be the first voice you hear when turning on these games. Save them. Save them. You can't. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. Make sure you wind that music box by clicking the subscribe button, otherwise the puppet might get ya. Click it! Click it! Oh, I guess you were safe after all. It's almost the holiday break. You know what I like to do during this time of love and gladness? Catch up on my favorite TV shows. But at this point I don't have cable and should probably avoid pirating things, which is why I subscribe to Hulu Plus. And by clicking the link in the description or typing in huluplus.com/MattPat, you can get a free 2-week trial of nonstop binge watch for all your favorite shows, like Bleach, One Piece, Family Guy, Sword Art Online 2. Or if you're like me, you'll probably relive the glory days of the 90s by marathoning Sabrina the Teenage Witch for days on end. Ugh, get together with Harvey already! While everyone else is fighting hordes at the mall, you, the smart one, will have done your online shopping and be lounging around working your way through Season 1 of Drunk History. So get your 2-week free trial by clicking on huluplus.com/MattPat. The weather outside may be frightful, but the Hulu Plus is so delightful. That was admittedly very cheesy. It's time. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where good things, or at least FNAF things, come to those who wait. And man, when it comes to this game series, no one was waiting for anything. I mean, the second game came out 3 months after the first, the trailer for the third was 2 months later, and like 4 minutes after that, the game was available to download. So forgive me if I was caught with my pants down on that one. I just wasn't prepared for it. But even more impressive than that abbreviated timeline was your ability to rip that final game apart. Hours after the release of the game, people were discussing good versus bad endings, 8-bit Atari cake, glitching through walls, and punching a flipping code into cement bricks arranged like a telephone dial pad. In regards to that last one, I have 2 things to say. First off, well done to you guys for figuring it out so quickly, and secondly, Scott, seriously. Seriously, Scott? Oh look, here's a wall. Let me just dial in my phone number. Beep boop boop beep boop boop. What? When did we jump from a point-and-click horror game to magical fantasy? This thing is like platform 9 3/4. I expect Harry effing Potter to apparate into Pirate's Cove or something. Jeez, here I was thinking that you'd plug your numbers into, the one other place that you see numbers in this game, the bonus jump scare menu, or something, anything, but nope, dialing it into a wall makes so much more sense. Okay, sorry, just needed to get that one off my chest. Moving on. Now, with 15 days at Freddy's under our belts and a few overtime hours clocked in for good measure, we have ourselves a completed video game trilogy, with the third game giving us more jump scares, more phone guy, and more fan. But this game also contains the final clues we need to get some closure on this game's deviously vague story. Scotty C certainly didn't make things any easier for us, but at this point I think we finally have enough puzzle pieces scattered across the 3 games to assemble a fairly accurate picture of this franchise's lore. Since you guys had a, let's just say, above average interest in this theory, I wanted to create something that answered as many questions as possible about this franchise. But beyond just the details, the question we all want an answer to is, what exactly happened in the story throughout this series? It's a pretty fundamental question to not have an answer to, and yet, despite thousands of videos, forum entries, and Tumblr posts, whoa, hey, put that away, you behave yourself. This game is already scary enough without you sticking your hook somewhere it doesn't belong, okay? Despite all those things, we still don't have a clear picture on the details. Yes, there's a child killer on the loose, the infamous purple guy, who's been using Fazbear pizzerias as his hunting ground of choice for years, but going into the 3rd game, we still weren't sure about who this guy was or even how many victims he'd officially taken. Then there are the animatronics. Sure, we generally understand that the killer's dead bodies have been stuffed into some of the suits, and that with the help of the puppet, the kids were able to find new life in those robotic bodies. But then, what about Shadow Bonnie and Shadow Freddy, who randomly appeared in FNAF 2 only to become prominent figures throughout Part 3? How do they fit in? What about the ghostly Golden Freddy, someone we've been talking about since the 1st game, and yet we still don't really know anything about him? Well, now that we finally have all the facts, I think it's time we revisit my timeline I presented in the last episode to see what I got right, what I got wrong. Yes, you heard that. Wrong. No shame. I'm a big boy. Mommy, wow, I'm a big kid now. And finally fill in the missing details to create what I believe to be my definitive Five Nights theory. And boy, howdy, it is a doozy. So strap in, theorists. You wanted it. You're about to get it. Overall, the timeline of the franchise I presented in the last video still holds strong. Decades before the name became a horror legend meriting its own theme park style attraction, Freddy Fazbear got his start at Fredbear Family Diner. It's here where our story begins as Purple Guy takes his first victim, something we see in the Take Cake minigame from Five Nights at Freddy's 2. What tells us that this is Fredbear's and first in the timeline? Well, as I said last time, in addition to it being a small space, the only character we see is Freddy, whereas all other minigames feature multiple animatronics. He's also holding a cupcake. Since that would later become Chica's signature item, the event depicted in this game must have come before she was created. Additionally, notice that the purple guy's murder takes place outside the building. This is the only time we see him murder someone outside the walls of a Fazbear building, which implies that this is likely his first victim. Serial killers often have what's known as a signature, a way of killing that's unique to him and him alone. For Purple Guy, his signature is dressing in an animatronic costume, then luring children to the back of the pizzeria and killing them there. But this murder occurs before he developed this particular style, implying that it's the first. From there, we know that the puppet jump scare that always follows this minigame, combined with the tier design on both the dead child and the puppet's mask, implies that the soul of the first child now exists in the puppet. The event caused the original owners to sell the Fredbear name, who then rebranded and avoided the negative PR, becoming what we know today as Fazbear Entertainment. They then opened a new chain of restaurants, which we never saw in the games, until the release of Five Nights 3. This is not Fredbear Diner like many interpret, but rather the first location of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, predating the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. How do we know? Well, by paying close attention to the old recordings of Phone Guy dug up in FNAF 3, he introduces us to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, not Diner, before explaining the functionality of the special spring-lock suits.
Welcome to your new career as a performer/entertainer for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Right now we have 2 specially designed suits that double as both animatronic and suit.
He also lets us know that the animatronics are still allowed to walk around freely during the day, meaning that this is happening before the bite of 87, in which an animatronic bites someone during business hours, removing their frontal lobe and resulting in the animatronics being restricted to moving around only at night.
For ease of operation, the animatronics are set to turn and walk towards sound to ease,
As Phone Guy informs us, and as we see in the Stage 01 minigame, there are two specialty suits, a Golden Bonnie suit and the origins of the infamous Golden Freddy. But the lifespan of these spring-lock suits is actually short-lived as we learn about their one fatal flaw.
After learning of an unfortunate incident at the sister location involving multiple and simultaneous spring lock failures, the company has deemed the suits temporarily unfit for employees. The classic suits are being retired to an appropriate location.
Now, let's pause here. Two employees are killed by the failure of a Bonnie suit and a Freddy suit. Where else in the game do we see Bonnie and Freddy sharing a unique feature that no one else in the game possesses? Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie. Could this be the origin of the paranormal Shadow suits? Yes, actually. Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie are tied to the ghosts of the employees who died in the spring suits. Get this, the employees' bodies were taken out of the suits, which is why their appearance is more paranormal and why they can't possess them as well as the children can. Plus, having this as their origin would explain the in-game behavior of both suits. In FNAF 3, we see that Purple Guy hides in a secret safe room that has been built into every pizzeria. A room that's hidden to customers and invisible to the animatronics programming. During the minigames that occur between nights, we see Shadow Freddy lead the other animatronics to this secret room, only to cause them to glitch out and then get torn apart by Purple Guy. This supernatural origin story is how Shadow Freddy is able to enter the safe room when other animatronics can't. How he's able to lead you to that room in the first place when other animatronics wouldn't be able to see it based on their programming, and even why he leads you there, knowing that Purple Guy attacking you will eventually free your soul. That's also why there's no Purple Freddy suit when you do finally enter that room. It's not an alternate Purple Guy costume like many believe, it's an apparition. Suck on that, Harry Potter, I knew someone would apparate eventually. It also explains why Shadow Bonnie's minigame in FNAF 3 always starts on Stage 01, the spring suits, and why it's the one animatronic we control that has the ghostly ability to glitch, fly, and teleport. As we concluded last episode, this is also the point in the timeline of the first missing children's incident, the one we learn about via newspaper clippings in Five Nights 1. So, based on the newspaper clipping evidence we have, we know that the mauve murderer dressed in one of the suits lured children to a back room and killed them. He's starting to develop his signature. But one nagging detail FNAF theorists have been wondering is, what suit does he use for his disguise? The answer? Golden Bonnie. Why? Well, remember the phone guy saying the faulty suits were being retired to an appropriate location. There's a high likelihood they're being stored in one of the safe rooms in the restaurants. Plus, we hear in FNAF 2 that the purple guy has a habit of using a yellow suit.
We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it.
But why not Golden Freddy? Phone Guy tells us so at the beginning of Night 5 in FNAF 3.
Management has also been made aware that the Spring Bonnie animatronic has been noticeably moved.
My, what an oddly specific detail to include, Scott Cawthon. And remember, these tapes that play in FNAF 3 date all the way back to the first pizzeria location, which is why this detail is so important. It reflects Purple Guy starting to develop his signature killing pattern. From there, we know the rest of the story. Purple Guy kills the kids, stuffs the bodies into the suits to hide them, but as we read the paper, is caught on camera and arrested. Meanwhile, the puppet gives life to the children, and the angry spirits possess the robots. Or is that really how it goes? Let's go back to the Give Gifts, Give Life minigame. The children are lying there dead, and the puppet first tries to give them presents. Weird, right? Weird until you consider that his place is at the prize corner. Giving presents is the only thing he knows that can make children happy. It's a reflex. Remember, this is still a child's spirit in this puppet, but when that doesn't work, the puppet goes around one more time and does the only other thing it can think of: put the bodies into the suits. You heard that right. In trying to save the children, he's the one hiding them in the animatronic suits, not the killer like we've been assuming. But then what about the fifth child, as there's only 4 here? Well, as we pointed out last time, the fifth child is there too, appearing at the very end of the minigame and taking the role of Golden Freddy. But remember, Golden Freddy is a decommissioned spring-lock suit at this point, deemed too unsafe to be functional. The reason he's slumped over and can't move like the rest is that his endoskeleton has been taken out. He's in suit mode, not free-roaming mode. He physically doesn't have the mechanisms in place to stand up and move. Possessed or no, a dead child's spirit just can't give a boneless suit the ability to stand. This also explains the lone naked endoskeleton skeleton that appears occasionally in both Five Nights 2 and Five Nights 1. An endoskeleton that once belonged to Golden Freddy. Whew, I know I made you wait for this one, so I knew I had to make it count. Heck, if there ain't a lot to cover. Still with me? Good, because we're ready for our next location. You see, since the puppet hid the bodies, no one knows they're in the suits until they start oozing and smelling, which, as we see in the papers, eventually gets the place shut down for health violations. The company tries to recover from, quote, the tragedy that took place there many years ago, but can't, and eventually is forced to shut its doors for good. This leads to the trailer for Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Finally, we're actually going to talk about a game in the series. Seriously, can you believe we've been going this whole time on locations that aren't even settings for the 3 main games? That is why this lore is so challenging, but also so interesting. Anyway, forgotten, dismantled, deactivated. These are the words you see at the beginning of the trailer. Back when the debate about whether this game was a sequel or a prequel to the first game, these words made it seem like a follow-up, that everything had been shut down since the first game, but it wasn't. These words are a reference to the business being closed down after that first missing children's incident. That's why posters everywhere in Five Nights 2 are all about the brand new Fazbear Pizza. It's the grand reopening after years of being out of business. That's also why the new toy animatronics have built-in facial recognition software to a criminal database. They need to be careful to prevent another incident, but as we know, it doesn't work. As we see in the Save Them minigame, 5 more children get killed in this new location. We know it's the new location because the minigame map's layout perfectly matches this new Fazbear business. We also know it couldn't have happened earlier in the timeline, as both the old animatronics and new toy robots are presented in the game. But this time, the puppet's solution isn't saving the kids, it's stopping the killer. He enlists the help of Freddy to try and SAVETHEM, leading the bear to the killer's location. Except Purple Guy came prepared, equipped with not a phone, but rather something to help him tamper with the animatronics. He knows that something fishy is going on with these robots, because he's been watching, studying. The puppet wants Freddy to save them, to which the killer's answer is only this: you can't. So how did the Purple Guy manage it when he had been caught years before? What about the bite of 87? How do FNAF 1 and 3 fit in? And most importantly of all, who is the Purple Guy? All that next week. Don't worry, I'll come back. I always do. In the meantime, it's all just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. Make sure you don't miss part 2 by clicking subscribe. Well, honestly, you still might miss it. The subscribe button is really just a glorified bookmark button. But still, it's the best you're gonna get, so might as well do it. And while you're at it, you know what else you should click on? The link in the description for some free food delivered straight to your door, courtesy of NatureBox. Honestly, I love this service. NatureBox delivers boxes of snacks straight to your door. It's like having a year-long Santa Claus giving you tasty presents, or like those care packages your parents send you when you're away in school. It's awesome, and it's free if you go to naturebbox.com/MattPat or click that link. They have over 100 snacks to choose from. Even as I write, I'm munching on some lemon tea biscuits and strawberry figgy bars. Seriously, look, here they are, so you know it's something I'm using myself. Anyway, it's free food that doesn't require you to leave your couch or break your game theory marathon. Sounds like a win-win to me, so check out naturebox.com/MattPat and start snacking. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory. We may not have made FNAF, but I like to think we've at least made it a bit more interesting. So in part 1 of this long-awaited all questions answered FNAF theory, we covered everything from the origins of the shadow animatronics, to the reason for Golden Freddy's ghostly behavior, to proof of what suit the killer uses. We clarified the timeline and even went so far as to dispel the myth that the killer is the one shoving the bodies into the suits. Click here if you missed it to get caught up. Don't worry, I'll wait. This is a pausable video after all. But today we're covering the major questions from the franchise, the final bits of the timeline, the ending of the game, and most importantly of all, the identity of the purple guy. So enough intro, let's cut to the chase. When we left things off, there had been another round of murder done in Fazbear Pizza. Purple guy had once again used a golden Bonnie suit to lure in another set of 5 kids and kill them, as depicted in the Save Them minigame from FNAF 2. The place gets closed for investigation a few days later, but the one thing that practically everyone overlooks in this location is that it gets reopened. In FNAF 2, the Night 1 phone call welcomes you to your new summer job at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
Hello and welcome to your new summer job at the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
Summer job. And yet, the paycheck at the end of the week reads November. There is not a single place in the world where November is a summer month. Not one. Meaning that these tapes, all these tapes, are pre-recorded. And honestly, that shouldn't be a surprise. Phone Guy's calls are recordings in every game. In FNAF 1, before Phone Guy dies, he says he's glad he recorded these messages when he did.
I'm kind of glad that I recorded my messages for you.
And then in FNAF 3, they find the old training tapes the Phone Guy made.
First of all, we found some vintage audio training cassettes. Dude, these are like prehistoric. I think they were like training tapes.
In short, all of Phone Guy's messages are unstuck in time, not recorded anytime near your tenure as security guard. That includes the ones in FNAF 2 talking about children going missing. The pizzeria isn't being shut down for an investigation of some missing children the week you happen to be working there. You're listening to old tapes meant for the night security guard from months ago. Need more proof? Night 6's call references a birthday party happening as the last event before the building closes. But what decorations do we see put up throughout the building for the entirety of the week you're working there? Happy birthday banners. Confusing? You betcha. Game-changing? Absolutely. This means that both Jeremy and Fritz, the characters you play as throughout FNAF 2, aren't the killer purple guy at all. They were both working in November, after the yellow suit investigation and the killer getting charged. Which brings us to the other key point in the timeline, the bite of 87. Ever since we heard about this mysterious frontal lobe nibble on that first fateful night at Freddy's, we've wanted to know more about this bizarre attack, the one that ends up resulting in animatronics no longer being allowed to walk around during the day. But now, 3 games in, we do know more. We know it took place in the location of FNAF 2 based on the 1987 date on Jeremy's paycheck. And furthermore, the newspaper clipping that ends FNAF 2 gives us a clue that it's the bite which closes this version of the restaurant, not some serial killing. Quote, after being open a few short weeks, the restaurant is closing its doors, the article says, with the new animatronics being scrapped for possible malfunction. That's game designer Scott Cawthon telling us that one of the new toy animatronics bit someone during the day. Why else would the new robots be scrapped while the old ones get kept for possible reorganization? Well, outside of an obvious need to retcon why these new robots didn't appear in Five Nights 1. It's because the company considered them safer, relatively speaking. So, then who's the biter? Well, it's none other than the pile of scraps and parts, Mangle. The most obvious clue is the animatronic's unhinged jaw. The frontal lobe is the biggest part of the human brain, and the size and shape of the other toy robots' mouths just wouldn't be able to handle the size of the human head, especially when you compare it to the Mangle's narrow snout and wide open mouth. There's also Mangle's sharper teeth and potential angle of attack. As shown by its jump scare, Mangle goes for the top of the head. And who got bit? Well, there isn't enough evidence to say definitively, but your most likely candidate would be fan favorite Jeremy Fitzgerald. Jeremy passes passes the test, and on his paycheck at the end of the week, he's welcomed into the family, presumably getting moved to day shift. Fritz gets hired to replace him on day 7, but then promptly gets fired for tampering with the animatronics. That means he's not likely the one to get bit, and instead the person who follows him on day shift is, leaving Jeremy as the most likely frontal lobeless candidate. But regardless of whether it's Jeremy or some other customer we've never met, someone gets bit, the restaurant closes for good, and as the newspaper clippings show, the old animatronics go into storage awaiting a smaller location with a lower budget. Fast forward to the 90s and FNAF 1. We know it's the 90s based on the hourly rate of the paycheck received by Mike Schmidt, security guard extraordinaire from the first game, something we proved in our first Five Nights video. And now we can breathe a sigh of relief, because this was the beautiful time long ago, last August, when the games weren't so complicated, when the biggest mysteries were a game-crashing gold bear and the words "it's me." No death minigames, no puppets, no need to shoehorn in extra overcomplicated storylines. That all would come later when the first game became a smash hit and got itself some sequels. And boy did those sequels make things complicated, as both featured 8-bit minigames revealing more details about this location from the original game. First things first, we know that the purple guy kills 5 children here. We see it in the Foxy Go 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 minigame from FNAF 2. Foxy runs past a grinning purple guy to see 5 dead bodies. Sorry, no fireworks this time, Foxy. And how do we know it's the FNAF 1 location? Well, it's the only time in the game when Foxy's stage, Pirate Cove, is located to the west of a dining area. See how he performs for the children by running to the right? That matches the map layout of the FNAF 1 pizzeria. We also know from the FNAF 3 minigames that this is where the purple guy dies inside a golden Springlock Bonnie suit in a safe room near the back. One built so that it would never show up on camera, conveniently explaining why it never appeared in the first game. But hold on, weren't those safe rooms sealed up a long time ago? I mean, we touched on this last episode, but the old recordings of Phone Guy we listened to throughout FNAF 3 say that these rooms are being closed off, discontinued, and will never be mentioned again. Why would a location 20 years later possess a safe room unless it was the same building as the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location? That's why it's in such disrepair when we see it in the FNAF 3 minigames, boarded up with rats on the floor. It's been closed down for years, which also means the dead kids from the Foxy Go 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 minigame aren't another set of new victims, cause seriously, at this point, the killer would have made his way through like a short bus full of pizza-hungry children. No, those kids are the first 5 dead kids, the ones who would eventually possess Old Bonnie, Chica, Freddy Foxy, and Golden Freddy. I mean, look, if the animatronics were possessed at this point, don't you think Foxy would be attacking Purple Guy rather than just running past him to perform for some dead kids? This also explains the random cutscene from FNAF 2 where the puppet's looking into Freddy's eyes. You can tell by the tables in the background and the design of both Bonnie and Chica that this is the FNAF 1 location with the old animatronics on stage. But it's not a flash forward to the game's next location, but rather a flash back to the moment the puppet brought these characters, these children, to life. Okay, but that's just tying together some loose ends in the story. We're interested in how this whole thing ends, and those FNAF 3 minigames give us the conclusion we're looking for. These flashback minigames show Purple Guy dismantling the animatronics from the security of the safe room one by one, but in doing so, he's unwittingly releasing the spirits of his former victims. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, Golden Freddy. When their powers combine, they are able to scare Purple Guy into the Golden Bonnie Springlock suit, which fails, crushes him pretty much to the point of death, though notice we never actually see him die, and the spirits fade away. Golden Bonnie, with Purple Guy inside, now known as Springtrap, rots away in the safe room for years until he's finally uncovered by the founders of Fazbear's Fright from the 3rd game. With the discovery of Springtrap, this haunted house attraction inspired by the years of mystery and murder of the pizzeria chain, finally has their first real animatronic, who then haunts the player for 5 nights and a nightmare night until the place burns down due to faulty wiring. The end. Take a bow. It's finally over. Well, kinda. We're still left with one final, seemingly impossible question to answer. Who is the purple guy? After spending, I kid you not, full days plotting out all the details of this game franchise on whiteboards, talking it over with anyone who would stand to listen to me ramble on and on about fictional haunted robots, and just looking at it from every possible angle, all logic points to it being pizzeria chain finally has their first real animatronic, who then haunts the player for 5 nights and a nightmare night until the place burns down due to faulty wiring. The end. Take a bow. It's finally over. Well, kinda. We're still left with one final, seemingly impossible question to answer. Who is the purple guy? After spending, I kid you not, full days plotting out all the details of this game franchise on whiteboards, talking it over with anyone who would stand to listen to me ramble on and on about fictional haunted robots, and just looking at it from every possible angle, all logic points to it being the phone guy. And no, not because I made a theory about it and refused to let it die. Honestly, I couldn't care less if that last video was wrong. At this point, I just care about the truth, and phone guy makes the most logical sense. I know your complaints, and I promise you, if you stick with me, you'll be convinced. First, there's the circumstantial evidence I presented during my FNAF 2 theory. Phone Guy's admitted love of Foxy being reflected by the smiling purple guy sprite during the Foxy Go 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 minigame. His distrust of the puppet, a creature haunted by his first victim that we see time and time again trying to bring a stop to his killing spree. His admitted role as a security guard, and even the weird phone-like object in his hand from the Save Them minigame. But there's even more evidence when we consider Five Nights 3. Consider this. He's the only person in the game who knows about the safe rooms. As we've mentioned before, all the safe rooms were sealed up back in the Springlock suit days, back in the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location, meaning every other employee coming afterward would have never even heard of these things. Phone Guy is the only character we meet who would have any knowledge of these rooms, and more importantly, of how they operate, how they're invisible to the cameras, and more importantly, to the animatronics. And that's just the beginning. He's also the only person who knows how to use the Springlock suits. Again, once they were decommissioned, the suits were hidden away. Regardless of whether you believe that the killer used a golden Bonnie suit the whole time, or you think he used a golden Freddy suit, either way, we know for a fact the killer was using one of the yellow Springlocked suits, and Phone Guy is the only character we know who had knowledge of A, where they were hidden, and B, how they were operated safely. Now, I know a lot of people have said that it couldn't have been Phone Guy because he knew better. He knew that they were dangerous and could kill him, so if he was indeed the purple guy, he wouldn't just hop into a Springtrap suit like we see depicted at the ending of FNAF 3. But there's one key detail that everyone has been overlooking, and that Scott carefully included in this game. Listen. Hear it? There's rain. There are puddles on the ground. It's dripping from the ceiling. The killer had been using these Springlock suits safely for years, but in his panic to escape the ghosts, he failed to notice the wetness of the building around him. The killer had never encountered this problem before because the building had always been in a decent state of repair, but now it's a wreck, torn apart by age. Rain is able to seep in, something he didn't realize when he was in such a hurry to run away from the ghosts. And if moist breath can loosen the locks, you can bet some rain would make those suckers ready to snap shut. And they do, killing our killer. I mean, all of that makes a pretty compelling argument, almost an open and shut case, if there wasn't one final major criticism to the Phone Guy theory since the release of FNAF 3. And it's a good one. The fact that Phone Guy seems to die during his Night 4 phone call from the first game.
Hey, listen, I may not be around to send you a message tomorrow. It's been a bad night here for me. I'm kind of glad that I recorded my messages for you. when I did.
If Phone Guy was the killer, why would the robots still be active after his death and the ghosts disappear? It just wouldn't make sense unless you stop to consider the rest of FNAF 3's endings. The big twist in FNAF 3 is the inclusion of a good and bad ending. By completing the game normally, you get the bad ending, in which we see Purple Guy die in a flashback minigame, and the whole thing ends with 5 masks representing the 5 main animatronics with lights on behind their eyes. The good ending, meanwhile, requires using some not-so-subtly hidden clues to unlock minigames, then basically ignoring those games, glitching them out, and giving hidden dead kids cake to make them happy, obviously referring to the victims of Purple Guy. Beat the game this time, and the ending is largely the same, but with 1 fewer animatronic mask and no lights on. The obvious difference here is that in the good ending, the souls of the dead children have been put at peace. When they disappear for good. They don't go back to their animatronic bodies. But the bad ending? The lights on behind the eyes of all 5 masks mean that these guys are still active. Angry, restless spirits still haunting the robots to this day. Because here's the thing. The good ending doesn't exist until you, as the player of the 3rd installment, give cake to those kids during FNAF 3's hidden minigames. What you play in FNAF 1, though, is the aftermath of the bad ending, when the animatronics have killed Phone Guy but are still out for vengeance. Yeah, you made it through those first 5 nights at Freddy's. You overheard the death of the Purple Guy recorded live on the phone, but it wasn't enough. You got the bad ending. Even with the killer crippled in the back room in a spring-lock suit, the lights are still on in these animatronics. They're still roaming the halls, attacking anyone wearing that much-hated security guard outfit. People like Mike Schmidt, an innocent guy just trying to do his job at a failing pizza restaurant. And as the final nail in the coffin, what Phone Guy says in his Night 4 recording perfectly foreshadows what we see in the games.
Maybe sometime you could check inside those suits in the back room. I'm gonna try to hold out until someone checks. Maybe it won't be so bad. Yeah, I always wondered what was in all those empty heads back there.
Think about what Purple Guy does. He hides in a back room, the safe room, hides in a suit, and despite getting sprung-trapped, actually does hold out until someone checks. Holds out long enough for the phone dude to find the hidden safe room, recover the animatronic, and set him free in Fazbear Fright. Exactly what the Phone Guy said he'd do in his final moments. And as Springtrap, he comes back in FNAF 3. Comes back like he always does. And with no real animatronics present at Fazbear's Fright, remember Springtrap is the only real one they've found, with all the rest scattered, probably located in dumps, which is why their bodies and faces are decaying. All that the spirits can do is appear as phantoms, hallucinations. Well, all except one. The puppet, who we see in his physical form roaming the hallways of Fazbear Fright. So real, in fact, that we see his reflection visible in the pools of water under his feet, meaning he is there and unburnt. There's only one way to truly end this. End the murderous Purple Guy, burning the place to the ground. The puppet gave robots life, gave spirits peace, and finally gave the murderer, the Phone Guy, his long-deserved death. Or at least tried to. And that is the end of the Five Nights at Freddy's story. No hat, no movie, no 4th installment.
What? Oh, no! 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 No!
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, what happened? What's wrong?
Look!
Oh no.
But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. Hey, if you enjoyed these theories, show your appreciation by subscribing to the channel. Seriously, I spent more blood, sweat, and tears on these scripts than I have on the entire 4 years of this show. You know, hopefully you liked it, hopefully you're satisfied with the conclusions I reached, and hopefully you decide to subscribe as a result. Wouldn't mind it. Now then, welcome back to the Super Amazing End Card Tournament, where today I just have a simple question. Are you excited about a Five Nights at Freddy's movie? Click over here to say yes, click over here to say no, and oh my gosh, it's Purple Guy, watch out, he's gonna kill you. Sorry, Scott Cawthon. I'm tired of waiting for you. This time you'll have to keep up with me. Oh, never mind. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where instead of waiting for FNAF 4 to be released, this time we're getting out ahead of the game. Or at least that was the plan. Scott, I swear you are the biggest internet troll out there. Oh, it's being released October 31st. Okay, let me plan my entire schedule around that. Never mind, it's now in August. Okay, fine, let me rework everything. Lols. Here's the full version now. You, Scott Cawthon, are the reason I have an emotional dependence on Diet Coke. But today I'll be sipping that sweet, sweet Diet Coke in sweet, sweet victory. Because guess what? I win! Scott, in your rush to get the game out, to get out ahead of my theories and completely flim-flam the internet and shock everyone by releasing the game 3 months early, you missed a huge detail. Maybe before releasing the game, you should have spent a bit more time researching, because this game, as you've presented it, is impossible. Let me explain. Basically, it's all but confirmed at this point that in FNAF 4, you play as the victim of the bite of 87, and that this game is either his nightmare or what he's seeing in a coma as he recovers from his injuries. Let me run you through the evidence real quick so that we're all on the same page. First, in the months leading up to the release of the game, there were clues hidden in the source code for some of the teasers on Scott's website, with the numbers 8787 repeated over and over again. Two numbers that anyone who hasn't been living under a rock will recognize as a key date in the franchise's lore, the bite of 87. This is further supported by the text on the teaser images. All of the pictures released on the site basically ask the same question: was it me? Which seems to refer to the actual attacker of the bite itself. But there was one more word we saw repeated throughout the teasers: nightmare. Hidden over top of multiple teaser images was that exact word. That, combined with the Freddy Krueger-ish design of the animatronics, with teeth and claws everywhere, something far different from how we've seen these things designed in the past, seemed to indicate that this would be the way a child would imagine these creatures if he had had a traumatic experience with them, making it seem like what we would be playing would be a dream. Couple that with some evidence from the trailer. The first words are, "What is it you think you see?" making us question the reality of the images in the game. But there was also something that everyone seemed to overlook about this trailer: the appearance of the number 4. Scott doesn't do things randomly, as I'm sure we're all aware by now. And notice the movement of the 4. It starts off in a horizontal plane, like it was laying down on something, say a bed, but then wakes up to stand vertically before the trailer ends. Even that remnant red rectangle is meant to symbolize the bed. Everything seems to be letting us know that what we're seeing isn't really real, it's a dream, or better yet, a nightmare. Now, fast forward to the game's release, or I suppose casually meander to the game's release since it wasn't too long afterwards, and we see that this theory still holds. Flowers, an IV, and pills will occasionally show up next to your bed, classical medical supplies that show us that this is a child in recovery. Foxy, who's hiding in a closet, will transform back to a plush toy if you hold the door closed on him long enough, making it seem like this was all a dream or hallucination. And of course, the biggest piece of evidence of all, the cutscene that ends Night 5, which, if you don't want a spoiler, click here to skip. All of you skipped now? Good. Actually shows the bite of 87 take place in the mouth of the golden Fredbear. This is further supported by the quote-unquote boss of the game being that same golden Fredbear, where in the final nights, he's the one who ends up stalking you. All the other animatronics disappear. You're being haunted by the suit that bit you. So yeah, that's it. All the evidence points to the victim of 87 being our protagonist, the character we're playing as in FNAF 4. Good job, Scott. You finally put together a game with a coherent plotline. Except you didn't. Scott Cawthon, if all of us are right in our theory, then you, sir, are wrong. Just when it looked like you were making a game that actually adhered to its own lore, you also made a game that is completely impossible from a scientific perspective. Loyal theorists, it's time we give Scott's latest bag of tricks a little lesson in real-life science. While frontal lobe injuries aren't as uncommon as people think, actually they happen all the time in car accidents, playing football, falling down, etc., having your whole frontal lobe bitten off has a much more profound impact on mental and physical functions. It would come with a whole slew of symptoms from motor skill impairment to nervous system issues, but the side effects we're most concerned with today would all be psychological. Removal of the frontal lobe significantly impacts the victim's ability to process certain types of stimuli, specifically fear stimuli. Let me give you some backstory. In the good old 1940s and 50s, psychiatrists often thought the best way to cure problems with the brain were to cut pieces out. Feeling depressed? Well, let's slice that out. Overly aggressive? That chunk probably wasn't important. As such, there are extremely well-documented studies of patients without frontal lobes, and what's fascinating about them was what happened to their fear response. Patients without a frontal lobe become uninhibited because they no longer have a fear response. Way back in my Fallout episode, we looked in depth at the most famous accidental lobotomy in history, Phineas Gage, who literally had an iron rod shot straight through his head, completely destroying his left frontal lobe. One of the most striking differences between pre-pole Phineas and post-pole Phineas was his sense of inhibition, and by that I mean post-pole Phineas had none. He had no sense of caution, no sense of fear or self-consciousness. He was described to be impulsive to the point of being rude and vulgar in public. No fear, no anxiety, no social pressure anywhere. Going back to the game, one of the things Scott does a great job of throughout the FNAF franchise is putting you in the eyes of Mike or Jeremy or whoever. We feel invested in our protagonist because we are that character. But in this case, that's scientifically impossible, specifically because of the bite of 87. If the main character of this game truly is Little Timmy Lost a Lobe, he wouldn't wander around a house clicking a flashlight on and off. Why would he? He doesn't care, because tragically, he no longer has the capacity to care. His brain structure no longer allows it. As if this weren't enough, a frontal lobe injury also tampers with concentration and attention span. The main character in the game is still supposed to be concentrated over a long period of multiple hours. But the thing is, patients without frontal lobes don't have this ability. In fact, they can only stay focused on what they see immediately happening in front of them. A child missing a frontal lobe who repeatedly turned a flashlight on and off in a hallway without seeing anything would lose interest. They wouldn't have the mental wiring necessary to concentrate on self-preservation. They would literally just go back to bed. The game is impossible the way it's being presented, because it would literally be over before it began. But the final and biggest nail in the coffin for this one is how frontal lobe injuries affect the imagination. The frontal lobe controls a ton of mental processing abilities, including dreams. You might think that an uncontrollable imagination would lead to exactly the kind of nightmares or hallucinations you see in this game, but in fact, it's the exact opposite. Rigorous studies have been done on the imaginations and dream states of lobotomized patients. While patients without a frontal lobe can have dreams, one thing they can't have is nightmares. Patients missing a frontal lobe carry their lack of fear and inhibition straight into their dreams. And why not? It makes sense. If the mind isn't registering fear consciously, there's no reason to process it subconsciously in a dream. Studies show that lobotomized patients can dream about idyllic scenarios, money, fame, praise, but they can't dream about the monsters under the bed, or in this case, the Foxy in the closet, making the nightmare state of FNAF 4 impossible for the victim of the bite of 87. In fact, going back to the dark days of psychiatry, some patients who experience the kind of recurring nightmare we see in FNAF 4 actually had their frontal lobes intentionally removed to stop these dreams from happening. One famous case describes a patient who was experiencing a recurring dream of being chased by ferocious animals. After the patient received the lobotomy in 1953, yes, he still had the dream, but would instead describe it as being a nice dream with some nice animals. His visions in the dream were no longer threatening. The animals were happy, He was happy, and he was no longer able to perceive any of the fear he once had prior to the surgery. So scientifically speaking, there is no single way the main character of FNAF 4 can be the Bite of 87 victim like Scott seems to have indicated. Sure, the game could be about another kid, I guess, but that would be lame. No, this game is meant to be about the victim of the Bite of 87. The poor kid who wasn't just attacked at the restaurant, but continues to be tortured through nightmarish visions, dreams, coma-induced hallucinations, whatever. I have zero doubt that that's what Scott intended, but the fact of the matter is, he just didn't do enough homework. A kid with those sorts of injuries wouldn't care about those things in the first place. He would have no fear, and there would be no animatronics, real or imaginary, that would be able to keep him up at night. Biologically speaking, nothing he would be experiencing would be any scarier than the fan. The fan. Sorry, Scott. Better luck in the movie. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. So that's the science of FNAF 4, but I'm working on picking apart the lore now. It'll take a few weeks, so make sure you subscribe to get notified of when that comes out. And to help you wait, click here to check out my all-new theory on how the characters in Dragon Ball Z pull off their famous Kamehameha waves. The science behind it all is actually incredibly cool. I mean, who hasn't wanted the ability to shoot energy beams out of their hands, right? So anyway, click there to check it out, or if you're in the mood for more FNAF goodness, binge watch some more creepy theories on the franchise by jump scaring this box right here. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go get a lobotomy so I don't have a fear response to that fan anymore. Oh, the fan. It's purple now? Forget purple man, purple fan? Ugh. My arch nemesis lives on. Oh, and by the way, get comfortable. The Steam page for this says it's the end of the original story, which means there are gonna be plenty more on the way. We have yet to leave Freddy Fazbear's. There's gotta be a code to open this. Bite of 87. New text? I must be close. Incident of 83. 1 movie. 11 animatronics. 11 kids. 1 phone guy. 1 killer. Hex code for purple backwards. Is that Markiplier?
Yes, MatPat, it was me. It was me the whole time, and that's no theory.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to the Five Nights at Freddy's podcast. Oh, sorry, I mean Game Theory. Game Theory! The show that covers theories on other games in the 2-week intervals between new installments of FNAF. But if I'm ever gonna see requests for games other than FNAF 4 in my Twitter feed, this video needed to be made. Because, I have a confession, Internet, I made a mistake in my last FNAF video. Not in my research, mind you. My conclusion that this kid scientifically could not be the Bite of 87 victim was actually 100% right, both scientifically and, as you've been eager to point out, lore-wise. No, I was wrong in calling this the Bite of 87. I'm man enough to admit my mistakes. Hey, it's why they're called theories after all, right? Anyway, in this case, Scott was sure to let me know my error in his first comment on any of my videos on the franchise to my knowledge, which was really exciting, but it did leave me wondering, should I feel honored or trolled? And let me just say, because you were asking, I didn't delete that comment. I only delete comments from game theorist bots. No, I don't want your free PSN codes, okay? So I guess Scott must have deleted it himself. Maybe there was a typo. Or maybe a clue to FNAF 5. Before we get that far ahead, let's close the book on FNAF 4. First, let's set the record straight on where it takes place. It does not take place in Fredbear Family Diner, but rather the first location of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the one from the old phone guy tapes found in FNAF 3. But the Springlock yellow suits are the only ones there, I hear you typing. And you're right, they obviously are, but remember, Phone Guy's tapes in FNAF 3 welcome you to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, not Fredbear Diner, before he tells you about their, quote, specially designed suits. Roll that cassette tape.
Welcome to your new performer/entertainer for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Right now we have 2 specially designed suits that double as both animatronic and suit.
Specially designed, i.e. not in existence during the Fredbear era. Plus, in that same set of phone calls, Phone Guy tells us the suits have become decommissioned after an incident where there were, quote, multiple simultaneous spring lock failures. What do we see at the end of FNAF 4? An incident where multiple spring locks fail simultaneously and a child dies. And let me be clear, because the terminology is pretty confusing. In the game, the word spring lock is used to describe both the suit as a whole and the individual locking mechanisms within that suit. A spring lock suit is made up of multiple spring locks. To have multiple simultaneous spring lock failures, like Phone Guy says, would either mean multiple suits going down at the same time, which is a bit coincidental and hard to believe, or that multiple locks within the same suit collapse at the same time, causing a catastrophic failure. Say, for instance, because a child is squirming to escape and his tears are moistening the locks. Crunch. And besides, don't you think it'd be weird for Fredbear's Diner to use these suits, have them kill a child, sell the company, and then Freddy Fazbear's Pizza starts using them again? It just wouldn't make a lot of sense. Long story long, although Fredbear and Springtrap are the featured attractions at this restaurant, this is a Freddy Fazbear branded joint, one dating back to, as we see on the TV set, 1983. But enough about the timeline. I don't want to dwell on it in this episode. To me, having a general placement of the timeline is enough because the most interesting part of this game is the ending and its overall meaning. Like I said in the other FNAF 4 video, if this was just a random kid who got bit, that would be really lame. So how does this particular kid fit into the overall lore? Why is this incident of 1983 so important to show? Who is the FNAF 4 kid, and what does the ending line of "I will put you back together" mean? Well, let me tell ya, the evidence points to him being the puppet. Let's look at the evidence. First, many have pointed out the streaming tears down the kid's face, which mimic the tears down the puppet's mask. Okay, sure, that was good evidence when we first saw them in FNAF 2, but at this point, those nice pixelated streams are on nearly every chubby-cheeked kid who's ever entered these restaurants. So alone, it's not much to go on. But we can take it one step further. While the tears themselves might not be interesting, look at this. It's a screen from the Mangle minigame back in FNAF 3. This weird, crying giant silhouette was just kinda out of place in the last game. And all us FNAF theorists just kinda glossed over it in our analyses, since, seriously, what is it? I mean, it kinda looks like the puppet, right? With its overall fabric feel and its thin striped legs. I mean, that's what I thought at the time, but again, there was really no reason to bring it up since it just didn't fit anywhere. But now we have a new game and new information that might make this make sense. Look at its body position. Notice anything specific about it? It resembles a position we see our FNAF 4 kid in a lot throughout the game, including his final scene, kneeling down, 2 streaming tear tracks, and his face turned 2/3 toward the camera. Do you see the connection here? But not only that, look at what our kid wears. A black and gray striped shirt. And remember, this is in a world where all the other kids are generally wearing single color outfits. It's an oddly specific detail. Now I ask you, what's the signature look for the puppet? None other than black and white stripes. But besides those design details, consider that there's no sign of the puppet anywhere in this game, and yet practically every other animatronic is present in some form, meaning that this game likely exists at a time when the puppet has yet to be created. Remember when he just kinda showed up in FNAF 2? Which, I should remind you, takes place 4 years later than this game. He just kinda came out of nowhere. Well, this could be the puppet's origin story. This idea of kid as puppet also works really well with the locked box at the end. What's in there besides Markiplier